What's up again, my friends? It's Carpo here. It's a rainy afternoon in April. Today's video is, well, I guess it's going to deal with a few different things. I've got a couple different subjects that I'm thinking about right now, but this one is particularly based around the idea of whether or not being a moderate or a moderate thinker is dangerous. And by that I mean, you may remember the old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I've thought this over a long time now, and when I see people who really stand up for what they believe in, I admire that. When I see people that are fighting for truth and fighting for freedom, fighting for their rights, I admire that. But sometimes I have to step back and ask myself, is this something that's worth fighting for? Or could the person possibly be misled? If one person is misled about, let's just say, a purpose that they are protesting or a particular thing that they're worried about that may or may not be real, if they're very convincing, they'll get a lot of people behind them. And then all of a sudden you have the mob at the gates, so to speak, looking to beat down the doors of whichever group they feel has wronged them or slighted them. We tend to place blame on anyone we can for our issues, but we see reality very skewed. Now earlier, as I was coming out to make this video, I picked this ball up in the backyard, and it's just a metal ball, reflective. And I decided this would be the perfect prop for this video. This would be the perfect metaphor for what I'm trying to describe right here. A lot of people talk about seeing the world through a lens, or a filter. That each one of us sees things through the filter of our reality, our past, our expectations, and how we view the world. I'd like to think of it more as a reflective ball. If this is reality, if this is the lens that we use to see the world, what we're actually seeing is a reflection around us, a reflection with ourselves in the center of that reflection. In other words, no matter what we try to look at in this world, it's through our own faces, our own minds. And the closer you try to look to reality, the more distorted your face becomes. In other words, the closer you look at things, the more your own opinions fill the space, and the more you become confused over what is real and what's not. Anybody who's done a lot of, looking into the way things work, anybody who does research of any type, especially into politics, the economy, things like that, you quickly become demoralized and realize that the fight is really difficult to win, if there's a fight at all. We can't identify it. And really that brings us to the main point here, which is being a moderate can be dangerous, but it's important to be balanced-minded, and I think that they're two different things. But when we aren't willing to look at the other side of an opinion, then we're just staring into the ball and missing everything around us. I guess it becomes this groupthink or all or none attitude. And this is where I see society going in this nation right now. Now I only know through my experience. The lens, my particular lens of the world has been shaped by my own life and experiences. I can't say how it really was in the past, or how it could have been, because I'm going by the history that's been fed to me like the rest of you. But what I've found is, at least in the past, when two sides disagreed about something, they could have a rational discussion and walk away shaking hands. Still disagreeing, but shaking hands. And we have entrenched ourselves so much in this battle that we've forgot what we're even fighting about. We've forgot what we're fighting for. And this is not by accident. This is a purposeful distraction. This is the propaganda, the wool that's pulled over our eyes, the one that frustrates everyone, that you can't even talk about because really there's nothing you can say. Propaganda is a tool to make profits, and that's the way it's always been. It's about power, it's about control. It's that part of human nature that a lot of us have overcome, have seen that it's an error in thinking, but that others choose that that's their main path, which is to dominate, to control, to lead, to to become greedy and selfish and righteous. When you look at the rich and the poor in this country and how the gap has widened, how our economy has remained, or has grown, but our wages have remained neutral, and we see that the kids today can't afford what the kids of yesterday could afford, you think, how is this great country growing again? You know, who's really benefiting here? So, back to the main point here, which is how to discuss things with one another. If we falsely accuse one another of things, if we use ad hominem attacks, or tell others that they're an idiot and that they're a complete fool and they don't know what they're talking about because they're a conservative or a liberal, whatever it might be. We use words like libtard and cuck, these kinds of things. They're non-productive. Because if you have any sense whatsoever, you know that most of us really truly do want the same thing. Most Americans want the freedom to do what we choose. We want to have a safe country, safe place to live. We all want to have jobs. Nobody wants to flood the country with millions of undocumented people and give all our money away to the rest of the world. It's just that there are different ways of thinking about what's important. How much should we help our neighbors? How many immigrants should we let through the border? How many countries should we help in war, for example, if any? Because if there's one unstable country, then it can destabilize a region. We know this, but is it our business? And we have debates and arguments within our, between maybe the left and the right politically, but there are many different ideologies and groups which think that they are correct and they have the proper answer, and everybody else is a complete moron. And there's a resistance to discussion because we don't want to hear the other side. There's a resistance to change because we're afraid of change. And there's an ego game that's being played by us. If we admit that we were wrong, there's a fear of admitting fault or error in any way. I could compare this to a video I haven't done. I don't even know if I made it or not. It was about police officers and how I've never heard a cop admit that they were wrong or apologize to somebody for perhaps singling them out or pulling them over without cause, anything. It's always the cop always has to be right. It seems that, I'm not saying all police are this way, but a majority of the police I've seen will not admit that they may be wrong about something. It's the mentality that a person who is in power has. A person who has power over another person doesn't have to admit fault. And we see this over and over in politics as well. But if we as individuals can't admit that we are wrong, then how are we ever going to confront any real enemies out there? So the next question here is the media to blame? And that's an issue of contention right now, I'm so tired of hearing about fake news. I mean, the thing is, I would just say it's propaganda news is more like it. It's more like most of the media is telling people what they want to hear. And this is where I come to the idea that it's not the media that's to blame, it's the consumer. Now, I stopped watching the news a long time ago. I can still find the headlines and see what's going on in the world without contributing to, the profits of a large news agency, which I feel has completely left journalism. It's like, you'll notice if you ever do watch the news, a lot of the times they quote newspapers. Almost all the time. They say, oh, well, this particular newspaper said this or that. That's because there's no real journalists. Most of them just sitting there and they have their flashing lights and their little podiums and their awesome camera angles so they can get your attention and, wow, tell me what's wrong with the world. And all the propaganda turns us against the other side. Ourselves. The other side of ourselves. Instead of against the corporations that are lobbying and dominating profits, which is, that's the next video I'm going to make. I have a whole list of things I want to talk about there, but this one's not just about the problems, but rather about how when we're distracted, we don't notice the real problems. And when we're fighting amongst ourselves, that's one of the oldest tricks in the book, divide and conquer. And if they can get us pointing the finger at each other saying, oh, you're a libtard, and oh, you're just an alt-right racist, those aren't going to go anywhere. We need to get to the bottom of why people feel the way they do. It's like when somebody mentioned something about alt-right, young alt-right guys the other day, and I said, it's important to understand why people think the way they do. not to just banish them and point your finger at them, because there are a lot of upset people out there. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's not that they're racist or hateful. It's that they have a misdirected hostility, and they're pointing it at the wrong person because they're believing what they're told on the news. And most of the people who say, oh, the media is all full of shit, and oh, it's all fake news, they quote the media. Even the people who have alternative news sites who talk about how fucked up the media is and all their stories are lies, there they are, quoting the media, using their own version of the story. Everybody's full of shit. The sooner we admit that, the sooner we can move forward. We should be able to see it pretty clearly by now, but there's a lot of ignorance out there. If we can admit that we are full of shit as individuals, then we can start to see the bullshit seeping out of the cracks everywhere in society. I mean, look at where we're at. We've convinced the public that whistleblowers are the enemy of the people, that they deserve to be in prison, that kind of stuff. Most people don't really think much about this, but a whistleblower risks their own freedom and their own life in order to expose corruption that affects us all. And then we throw them under the bus because, oh, well, they're a rat or a narc or a liar. That's the mindset that they've convinced us of. This is a good way of, because it's the whistleblowers, the truth tellers, and those who really get to the bottom of things, the true journalists, that are actually making any difference in this world as far as changing the policies that affect us all. Because, you know, Congress and it was bought off a long time ago. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs in this country, but it is what it is. I just wanted to say we're all on the same team here. We really are. And we may not agree on all the principles and all the ideas, but maybe we're all idealists at heart, but we can, if we really discuss things with people, you find you have more in common than difference. You know, I haven't personally talked to anybody who really wants anything harmful for the country or for other people. Most people just want to live peacefully, and they don't know where to place the blame. They don't know who to be angry at. So be angry at the political system. Be angry at the politicians who are lying to your face, and the corporations who are running small businesses out and consolidating wealth and further just tearing this country apart. So talk to people. Separate the subject from your own ego. Don't get upset because somebody says, oh, well, this isn't true, or this is this way. If you associate yourself with these ideas, then you're going to get upset thinking and taking it personal. You have to remember, we're just people. The ideas are separate from us. If we don't agree on a political thing, it doesn't mean that we know what we're talking about or we should hate another person for it. And so my last thing I'd like to say is a sense of humor is an absolute necessity. I don't trust people who can't laugh. Sounds kind of funny, but I've never really thought about it that way. But folks who don't have a sense of humor make me nervous, and I don't like being around them. You got to be able to joke about it all, because it is silly, you know, the things that we as humans think are important. But at the same time, if we think they're important, then they're important, you know. It's kind of like when people use the word first world problems, say, hey, they're still problems. Everybody will face them one day or another, and so we are all in this together. We're not, it's not a matter of race against race, men against women, or right against left, or country against country, state against state, but that's just the mentality we have. That's why we like sports. You know, I've seen people get in fist fights over a football team that they think sucks, or like, you know, fans just in sports are a great example of how far things can go when you've got a huge group of people who have a different viewpoint from another huge group of people, and a riot breaks out in the streets because everybody's frustrated about something else in life, and they take it out on the city, or whatever it might be. People are angry, and it's a powder keg out there. And the only way to keep that pacified is to keep people angry at each other, so the mob isn't sitting at the gates of the White House or elsewhere. So hopefully I covered all the points I wanted to cover, and hope you all have a wonderful day. Don't let it get you down, but, you know, really, this main point here is to say, let's all just get along and discuss things as adults, as rational humans, you know, because you've got to separate yourself from the subject. You really do. And identity politics, they aren't working. They aren't working at all. So be well, take care of yourself, and take care of your neighbor, and your friends and your family. Have empathy. It's really important. Be well, my friend.
Carpo's channels, 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 Carpo's channels.